So breathing through the nostrils, as you put it. Breathing through the nostrils, breathing through your mouth, alternate nostril breathing, anything to do with breathing. This is a practice for the body. You are not the body. You are not the body. You are not the body. That's not what you are. So, any practice for the body is an inferior practice. Inferior practice to Ramana's suggested method of self-inquiry, which takes us to our essence, our heart, the essence of what we are, our true identity, ultimate truth, ultimate reality, happiness, devoid of misery. This is the self-inquiry that Ramana taught us, is teaching us. This is the superior and only ultimately true practice. It's the only practice that takes us out of Maya. All other practices are in Maya. Maya meaning illusion. And the body-mind is a part of that illusion. Now, please don't feel offended because I've called your practice inferior. Please don't. No offense is intended. We don't look down upon inferior practices. It's not a value judgment. It's just the way it is. And these so-called inferior practices can be very, very beneficial and important to us. So, following the breath, or whatever kind of breathing practice you do, if you enjoy doing it, if you're moved to do it, then that's good. You carry on. But it is not self-inquiry. And by itself, it usually will not lead to liberation. But that's not quite true. Following the breath can be all you need. Because even without realizing it, if you do that, your mind will become more and more subtle. And eventually it'll go beyond itself. And that when it becomes very subtle, when the mind becomes very quiet, very subtle, and then naturally it'll go beyond itself. That is called self-inquiry. Self-inquiry is a spontaneous, natural thing that naturally happens as the mind gets quieter. So, following the breath can be all you need. But you have to go through the door of self-inquiry, whether you know it or not, or whether it happens, if it might just spontaneously happen. Yeah, I've got the collected works of Sri Ramana next to me. I came prepared today. And remember, there's only one text you need that contains all the teachings for liberation. This one. Where am I? Nanya in Tamil. So, have you read this, Prabhu? Have you read?
I've ordered it. It just came in today.
Oh, good timing. Yeah, you got an Amazon delivery as well, did you?
Yes. Today morning I got it.
Perfect. You see, yours is better timed than mine. Your Amazon delivery, because mine just happened at the beginning of the meeting, of course. And how many pages long is it in this version? So page 36 to page 46, 10 pages. And he describes the practice of self-inquiry in the first few pages. And then afterwards, he describes other practices such as breath control or following the breath, pranayama. And he says, pranayama purifies the mind. He uses the word one-pointed. It makes it one-pointed. He talks about how the mind naturally, not naturally, but through illusion is scattered. It's thinking about this, it's thinking about that, it's thinking about something else, it's thinking about something else. It's always going from one thing to another. This is called the scattered mind. It's branching out in all these different directions, thinking about all these different things. And this kind of mind usually is obstructive. It's an obstruction to self-inquiry. So Ramana teaches us that through doing practices like following the breath, the mind becomes one-pointed. And as it becomes one-pointed, all these varied thoughts, they become just one. And this is what Ramana calls strength of mind. When he talks about strength of mind, he's not talking about a sort of European style strength of mind, the will to win, the will to triumph over all odds. That's not what he's quite talking about. Sometimes you get these movies and it's about the triumph of the human spirit over the elements. Maybe you've got a bunch of mountaineers who are climbing a mountain and they go through all these difficult times and eventually, a few of them make it and, I don't know, they plant the flag on the summits of the mountain or something like this. That's not what Ramana is talking about when he's talking about strength of mind. He's talking about the ability of the mind not to be caught up in objects. Ordinarily, remember I said the mind is constantly thinking about this, thinking about that, thinking about this, thinking about these. This is the mind caught up with objects, things. And the breath gives us a focal point. So our mind is just holding on to one thing. He uses the simile of an elephant. An elephant walking through a village, destroying things with his trunk, the elephant's trunk, swaying this way, that way, destroying things in his path. But if you give the elephant a stick to hold, it holds onto the stick and doesn't destroy anything. This is like breathing. And he says, when one has gained strength of mind, self-inquiry becomes very easy. Self-inquiry becomes very easy. So if you're finding self-inquiry difficult, then you should do these, what are called inferior practices. They become very important. They're inferior because they do not directly by themselves only lead to liberation. Only self-inquiry does that. But you might need that. And a very good inferior practice. There are lots of inferior practices. Lots of practice. In inferior practice, any practice involving the body-mind. One of the best ones is just coming to Satsang. Again, it can have a beautifully calming effect on the mind. Another wonderful practice is to chant Ramana's name with love and devotion, to gaze at his image, to chant his name, to revere his form, to love him. Bhakti for the Guru, Guru Bhakti, Guru Bhakti. To chant his name, to revere him, to hold him dear in our hearts. Sorry to cover his face here, but it's more about the feeling. To hold him dear within us. We focus our attention onto Ramana, you see. And when we consider Ramana to be within us, that attention goes within ourselves, to our true self. So self-inquiry is the only way. But there are many, many, many roads to self-inquiry. And the breath is a wonderful, wonderful way. I mean, personally, I love following the breath. But I've been told that everyone's different. You know, some people don't like it so much. It depends on your conditioning, your vasanas, your karma. It depends on your karma. So what do I mean by self-inquiry? Self-inquiry, we have to give everything up. We have to let go of all of Maya, all objects. And the breath is a part of Maya. So eventually we let go of the breath. And we abide as just pure consciousness, pristine, pure consciousness with no objects in it whatsoever. This is our self, our true self. This is what we are. And when we do that, we are one with him, or one with her, or one with that. This is the God consciousness. This is mystic union with Guru Ramana, or whatever, however you conceive the divine or your Guru. The specific name and form of your Guru doesn't matter, as long as it is, as long as you have that genuine connection and love for that name and form. For me, one of the many wonderful things about Ramana, is his life story is a wonderful life story. And it's such that many people, I'll speak for myself, I can't help but trust him. That's one thing. The second thing is that his teachings are so pure. His teachings are so pure. And very rare to find such a pure, true teaching. Very rare. Trust me, I've read a lot of books. And it's very rare to come across such a true teaching. Very rare. And then he's written his teachings in a very clear way in just a few pages. So you don't have to study, you don't have to lose years of your life studying reams and reams of scripture. I'm adding more to this list. Plus, he knew all the scriptures, all the Hindu Vedic scriptures. He knew them all. He was very well versed in all these scriptures. So he's distilled the scriptures for us in a way that we can trust. So, very lucky to have Ramana in our lives, to have heard his name, to have seen his face, to have encountered his teachings, and then perhaps even have a sense of love or devotion towards him. This is very special.